All right, it's now 7 o'clock. My name is John Ladati. I'm acting chair at this point. I'm going to call to order the Inland Wetlands and Watercourse Commission meeting for Wednesday, January 24th, 2024. It's now 7 o'clock. I would note that one of our commissioners, Arel Locke, is attending this meeting online. And I guess we're only missing one of our commission members. That would be David Tolley. So we're going to go right to the agenda. The first item on the agenda is to elect a chairperson and vice chair. So if someone would make a motion.
I'll make a motion to elect John Ladati, chair of the Inland Wetlands and Watercourses Commission.
Thank you. A second on that motion?
Second.
Fred Jones, second. Any discussion? Hopefully not. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Abstentions? I'll abstain. All right, minutes.
No, vice chair.
Vice Chair.
Oh, vice chair. I'm sorry. I thought it was a double motion. No, that's fine. That's fine. I'd like a motion for vice chair.
I'll make a motion, Susan Oki be a vice chair of the Inland Wetlands and Watercourses Commission.
Suoki, okay.
Second.
Fred again, second. Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
I'll vote on this one. The vice chair does all the work,
I'm the official grunt.
There you go. All right, minutes. I'm assuming everyone's had an opportunity to review the minutes of the last meeting.
Looks like it was Empire Solar Solutions.
Probably coming in.
Yeah.
All right. May we have a motion on the approval of the minutes from the last meeting?
I make a motion to approve the minutes from the meeting of December 13th.
I'd entertain a second.
Second.
Second by Vicky. Any discussion, modification, changes to the minutes as printed and provided before the meeting? Hearing none, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Okay, great. All right, now we're going to go to the agenda. We do have a scheduling issue this evening because Fred Jones has to leave early. So I'm wondering if anyone's here from the Vessel Real Estate Holdings and we can take them out of order, move them up on the agenda because that matter is going to move eventually to a public hearing. And I know it's important to Fred that he hear the initial presentation. So I'd ask for a motion to move that agenda item up to the first agenda item.
So moved.
Fred, thank you. Second,
Second.
by Susan. Further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Okay, thanks. And I just indicate to the applicant and the general public that I've recused myself on this application when it was before this commission before, and I'm going to do that again, but unless someone has an objection, I'll continue to run the meeting without involving myself in the deliberations or in the any vote for this application. So is there anyone, I'll start with the applicant. Do you have an objection with that arrangement?
No objection.
Just identify yourself for the record.
Josh Levy from the applicant, no objection.
Thank you, Mr. Levy. Anyone from the public who objects to that arrangement? Hearing no response? Okay, then we'll proceed. If someone's here from the applicant, it would be helpful if you'd come forward, identify yourself, and give us your presentation. And just so everyone understands, this is not the public hearing. This is just a presentation of the application. The public hearing will be scheduled in the future.
Thank you, Chair. Appreciate it. Thank you all for having us here tonight, for giving us the opportunity to present to you and tell you about the application, answer any questions you might have at the outset. I think Abby had arranged for the presentation to be up on the screen.
Can we?
Oh, here.
So my name is Josh Levy. I'm the Executive Vice President of Vessel. And with me here tonight is Seamus Moran, who is our civil engineer, Jim Sipperly, who is a registered soil scientist and wetland scientist, George Logan, also a wetland and soil scientist, Chuck Coursey, and our landscape architect is here as well. So I'm going to start out tonight by just going through a brief presentation. Feel free if you'd prefer to ask questions as I go or stop me. I'm happy to answer as everybody prefers. As you can see up on the screen, this is the
You probably want to go, you're controlling the computer back there.
It should be fine.
Okay. So just talk a little about the property. So you have, the property is 37 Hartford Avenue, and this is a view property overhead, an aerial view. You can see the property goes behind two other properties. It's sort of a, two rectangles almost put together. Around the property are a series of offices, two dental offices, a series of other offices through the Cumberland Farms at the street, as well as other residential uses across the street. Our attorney is here as well, Mr. Tim Hollister. The intersection of Hartford Avenue also is with Winmore Drive, and then the other side is Rushford Mead. Can you send them to Sarah?
Mr. Hollister, just bring you up to speed. We moved your client's application up on the agenda because Fred Jones, one of our commissioners, has to leave early tonight. In anticipation that this will go to a public hearing, we wanted to hear the presentation.
Right.
So we moved yours to the top. The second thing I'd like you to know is I've recused myself on this application previously, and I asked your client in your absence, I will continue to recuse myself on deliberations and any voting for the application, but I think the commission wants me to run the meeting. If you don't have an objection with that, we proceed on that basis.
No, that's fine.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Great.
Appreciate it.
Okay. So how far did we get?
Not very far. So
Okay.
straight out.
All right, well, good evening, Commissioners. I'm Attorney Tim Hollister, and I apologize for being here. There was a very large crash on 185, right in Weatog. There are several fire trucks, and I was stuck behind that for almost 15 minutes. So, pray for the people who were involved. There are several ambulances. Anyway, Mr. Levy has already started to talk to you. We have Mr. Moran, our engineer, who's here, and Greg Wilson, landscape architect from Fuss & O'Neill, Jim Sipperly, and Logan, our soil scientists and biologists. And we've also been assisted on community outreach by Chuck Coursey of Coursey & Company in West Hartford. I think, the basic background is that we were here from July to November of last year, and that application was withdrawn to deal with an issue that we knew how to deal with, but we didn't have time at the end of the process, so the better part of valor was to withdraw. And that dealt with the issue of discharges from the on-site septic system, part of which was wrapped up in the fact that it was eventually, I think, confirmed that sewers are not available to this site, and septic was really the only option. I will add that in terms of the involvement of Mr. Coursey, that he has been charged with doing outreach to residents, stakeholders, neighbors, and some of the changes that you're going to hear in the application here are a direct result feedback that we've gotten from those neighbors and stakeholders. So what was submitted last month is a revised application, keyword meaning reduced in size and impact. And as Mr. Ladati just said, our understanding is that tonight is not a public hearing, but just a preliminary presentation. So without any further delay, and again, apologies for my tardiness, but I'll turn it over to Mr. Moran.
Thank you, Mr. Allison.
Mr. Lawson, a few things first. So, I thought it might be helpful for the board tonight, just if I told you a little bit about us. I know it's not specifically applicable to a wetlands application, but every application obviously has to do with, your plans for the site and getting to know who the applicant is. And so I wanted to just give you a brief understanding of who we are at Vessel. So my partner and I founded Vessel because we wanted to create a luxury level, high quality housing product that could be available to regular working people in communities who were left out of housing paradigms. So, most housing that's produced today is produced at a very, very high level, where it's awfully expensive. It's not available to many of our senior citizens, our teachers, our police officers, municipal employees, people who are graduating college, people making $60,000, $65,000 a year who can't afford Class A rent and therefore relegated to Class C housing in communities or can't afford to live in the communities that they're in at all. And so, we try to create housing for these people as a way of, providing something that's positive within the community and allows people to live with dignity and respect. What we look at it as our product is, really, we say designed to delight, but really it's made so that, residents are extraordinarily happy with where they live and so that communities have great housing within them. We have 9-foot ceilings, we have stainless steel appliances, washer dryers, everything is standard within the unit, but all of our units are also built to universal design standards, making them available to people of varying abilities, regardless of what their what their lifestyle needs are, whether they're a senior citizen or whether they have any sort of disability. We have air monitoring and purification in these units so that everything people breathe is healthy and clean air. We have UVC technology that sterilizes surfaces so everything in the units are clean. We have solar photovoltaic on the roof so that operate as close to net zero as possible. And tons of other advancements that allow people to have, an incredibly high quality unit that, is both healthy and, a wonderful place to live. Just touch on, what our building brings. Our building is going to be the safest building possible. It's all steel, it's fully non-combustible, fully sprinklered, alarmed. We have every advanced life safety system in the building, secured entry. Every building is elevator served so that people, of various ages and needs and abilities can live there comfortably. And we have a building that's also that's quick for construction purposes. So we limit the amount of fossil fuels, the amount of trucks on site, the amount of emissions, and can build a building in as little as 9 months as opposed to an 18 to 24-month process that's typical. We have a huge, goal of creating very sustainable products. Everything we do is about energy efficiency and sustainability. So we have active systems that, provide water leak detection to prevent leaks in buildings. We have solar photovoltaic, as I said, on the roofs. We use low-flow fixtures. We have active energy consumption features so that people can save money in terms of the operation of their buildings. And many other things that lead to the most energy efficient and sustainable building possible. And then everything is created through our smart home technology that provides, a number of different things in terms of quality of life as well as accessibility features and performance features that allow people to have, a number of different things that are typical in a unit. So a little bit about the site today. You can see the site here. The site was previously approved in 2007 for the development of about a 45-foot tall office building. That office building never came to fruition. You have currently an unfinished foundation on site with all sorts of other no sort of problems and associated with it. No current stormwater management, obviously, no landscaping or anything else like that. This is a picture of the existing conditions. I'm going to take a brief pause here and just bring up our, actually one of the leadership so that we can talk about the existing conditions as well as these plans.
So, we'll go over a couple of these things. Good evening, everyone. My name is Seamus Moran, a professional engineer in Connecticut. And I'm screwing this up. We're out of it again. Is there a button up there we have to press to get it back into presentation? Can I handle all the tech for me? Sorry, one day. Let me start over again. My name is Seamus Moran, PE in Connecticut, representing the applicant. I work for H&H Engineering Associates, and I'm the civil engineer for the project. Familiar with the site, I'm sure. It's a new application though, so you're going to hear the same stuff again, unfortunately, for the record. So what you're looking at here is an existing conditions plan. This is what we have out there, and I'll take a step back in a moment. But this is, if you go to the site right now, this is what you see. There's a partially constructed foundation and some stormwater management improvements. You can see from the surface, catch basins, manholes, and a steep slope in the back of the property that was rough graded a few years ago. There's a soil stockpile area in the front, and what you see in the upper right-hand corner of the sheet is the red line delineates the limits of the 100-foot inland wetlands upland review area, and the blue line delineates the 200-foot watercourse setback. So we have both of those on our property to the rear of the property. The total property is about 2.55 acres. On the property, we have about 1.24 acres of land within the 100-foot upland review area, and an additional 0.41 acres between that 100-foot inland wetland setback and the 200-foot watercourse setback. While I'm mentioning numbers, what you'll see when I get to it is we're proposing 0.34 acres of improvement within the 100-foot review area, and an additional 0.29 acres of improvement within the 200-foot, between 200-foot and the 100-foot. So if you can skip, so this is an overview of the proposed site plan. Generally, the building that you were proposing will be in a very similar location as the foundation that's out there now. So if you go out there now, you'll see where the new building will be is in a very similar footprint to the existing foundation. In the parking, we are trying to reutilize a previous approval for parking spaces to the back of the building, which is essentially where we're laying our parking out, is right behind our building. Next slide, please. Greg will get into the planting plan, but as you can see, we're buffering our improvements with some landscaping. There's a much nicer color rendering that Greg will get into later, or maybe after I present. We'll come back to it, just so we don't jump around. So as I mentioned, actually what you see on the first slide is 2 steps back. Prior to 2007, it was a single-family residence with a paved driveway. Then in 2007, it was approved locally for an office building, a 45-foot tall office building with 53 paved parking spaces, which again, this is as you see it now, partially constructed. The foundation is out there. You can see the parking is going to be very similar, will be very similar to what you'll see when we present our proposal. So the layout that was approved in 2007 is very similar to what we have and what we will be presenting in a moment here. Next slide, please. So this is and actually what this 2007 approved plan shows here is there was additional parking for an additional 11 spaces in the back that was approved as a overflow parking area, and another 25 spaces in the front. So 53 were approved as paved, and then they had an additional 25 in the front as overflow, and an additional 11, most importantly, in the 100-foot upland review area that was in the back right corner of the property here. Next slide, please. So this, as I alluded to, the existing conditions plan, that's the existing foundation. There's no building there, it's just the foundation, but they installed some improvements. They installed some of the stormwater management system, I think all of the stormwater management system, in fact. They installed the septic system, utilities, and they rough graded the back of the site where the parking would be. They never put any pavement in there. It was just simply a base coat and rough graded. But that area that you see where the parking will be is already rough graded. It's already flat for our parking area. Next slide, please. What you see here, this is our proposed layout that I just mentioned, 56 parking spaces. By Public Act 212944 are required. By Town of Granby regulations, 64 are required, and we are at 56 parking spaces. Also, actually, if you go to the next, what we're proposing is, a 3-story building, 42 units. So a slight variation from previously, however, it's a new application. So what we're looking at is 3 stories, 42 units. 40 of those are 1-bedrooms, and 2 of those are 2-bedroom units. There's a dumpster on the site. There's walkways internal to the site to get to the front door. Some storage areas, and 3 accessible parking spaces in the front, closest to the front door. Next slide, please. What you're looking at here is a grading and drainage plan. High level, it's essentially one infiltration system, the StormTech MC 3500 system. That allows for infiltration. It allows for treatment of stormwater from the parking lot and the building rooftops for the 50 and the 100-year storm events. 50 years for the parking lot, 100 years for the building rooftop. It also infiltrates for the 25-year storm event entirely, so we won't have any discharge up through the 25-year storm event. And any discharge for the 50 and the 100-year is actually conservative because our infiltration rates on the site were well over 100 inches per hour, and we used a design rate of 20 inches per hour. So our discharge at the 50 and the 100-year are relatively minor as it stands, 1.61 CFS and 2.74 CFS from our stormwater management system, and that is conservative in those values. Next slide, please. What you see here is the stormwater management system. We have one long linear row along the back side of the parking lot. The public health code and the DEP code are somewhat at odds in how stormwater and septic effluent are managed together. So we found kind of a happy medium. We heard the concerns of the commission last time. So we are using a DEP practice of using stormwater runoff to dilute stormwater effluent, which is the health code would much rather you keep them completely separate. But we are meeting the separating distances by the health code to allow infiltration of stormwater above the septic system, to allow the stormwater effluent to dilute the stormwater runoff to dilute the septic effluent. And the reason being, as everybody remembers, the nitrogen dilution analysis was one item that was a sticking point the last time we were here. It's a DEP item, not anything we are required to manage. However, we heard the concerns and we've redesigned everything, stormwater system, septic system, and now our nitrogen concentrations at the wetland limit are below the public water, the threshold for public water drinking limits. Next slide, please. The last slide that I'll present is the soil erosion sediment control plan. Pretty basic construction entrance, silt fence, temporary soil stockpile areas, erosion control matting on any steep slopes. We have silt fence, and we also have a second core mat that's upgrading of that. So we have 2 layers of protection along the slope. We are installing a retaining wall to limit our disturbance down the slope as well. That slope, which Greg will get into in a moment, we are looking to revegetate. There is some vegetation out there now. It is steep, but one of the concerns the last time we were here was that we weren't landscaping the slope. So Greg will get into the landscaping we're proposing on the slope. And with that, I will pass it off to Greg. Next slide, please. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Greg Wilson, landscape architect with Fuss & O'Neill in Manchester, Connecticut. So the proposed plantings in the regulated area were largely arrived at in coordination with the previous wetland agent, Kate, through her review and in response to some comments. And what we arrived at was a planting buffer at the top of the slope between the parking lot and where the top of the slope begins, and then additional plantings at the bottom of the slope adjacent to the wetland area. The purposes of those were to provide canopy adjacent to the wetland area, which would reduce solar exposure, prevent reestablishment of some invasive growth that's on the existing hillside. And then the buffer at the top was highly visual in nature, and then also a physical barrier to prevent anything from blowing from the parking lot down into the wetland, down that slope into the wetland area. The proposed plants selected are all native flowering and or fruiting and of high value for wetland species. They're also listed in the native plant list that's part of the Connecticut Stormwater Manual. Specifically the tree species, wanted to make sure they were fast growing so they could get up to height, provide a big canopy. And also the benefit is to have a more expansive root system that'll help stabilize all the regraded areas at the top and bottom of the slope. The shrub species are also bigger suckering shrubs. So as they grow, they'll mass out, new shoots come up out of the root systems, and they'll create a pretty big, varied buffer of shrub material. And then for the disturbed areas, due to regrading, which is those little stipple hatches. Actually, Josh, you want to go to the coloring plan? It's easier to show. The regrading of the slope, which is predominantly from behind the parking lot to where our shrub and tree buffer ends, and then down the slope, which is for the installation of a new stormwater pipe. That'll be reseeded with a native steep slope mix, which contains 20% annual ryegrass, which the purpose is it germinates very quickly, it stabilizes really quickly after seeding. And then the rest of the mix is flowering perennials and grasses that'll provide kind of a diverse seasonal, varying cover throughout the year. So that's really the bigger green on the left and right, that's existing vegetation and tree cover. And then all our proposed plantings are, at the top, bottom slope, and then where the regrading needs to occur.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman and members of the commission. For the record, my name is James Sipperly. I'm a certified soil scientist and a Connecticut wetland scientist. I also feel to compel you, I am the environmental planner for the city of Middletown. I staff the wetland commission there. I've been working there for 26 years. I'm also the wetland agent for the town of Portland. It's staffed at the wetland commission. I'm also on my wetland commission in my hometown of Basra. And I know how these public hearings work. If you're going to have a public hearing, I'm not going to waste a lot of time being duplicative here because you guys have a public hearing and go into a lot more detail. But I'm going to touch base just on some of the highlights. My first letter to you guys was dated June 25th, 2023. And basically, it tells you when I was out on the site originally, which was June 15th, I sampled the soils throughout the site. On the site, there are no wetland soils, but because we were concerned about the 100-foot regulated area from the proposed development, we got permission from the adjacent property owner to go on the property, and I delineated the wetlands there. The flags were WF1 through WF24. The inland wetland soils were designated as a poorly trained Saco silt loam. There was some upland geotechnical borings by GEI consultants I looked at that report, and the soils were classified as a very well-drained upland Hinkley soils. All of the wetland soils off the site are classified as a forested wetland, a general classification. The wetland area has the functions that include groundwater recharge and discharge, sediment stabilization, nutrient removal and transformation, product export, and really good wildlife habitat. The proposed development will not be disturbing any of the wetlands of the watercourses down in the slope. I also, my next letter to you guys was dated August 4th, and that was a result of looking at a memo from Kate Bendars that was dated July 28th, 2023. She had a bunch of comments and questions, and I responded. One of the questions she had was that watercourse is a perennial or intermittent, and it's definitely perennial. And all the existing invasive species she wanted to have flagged prior to it being removed from the construction site, which we agreed to. I then had a conversation with her on August 1st, and we talked about the plantings that you heard just now from the landscape architect. We were discussing the types of trees and types of shrubs and where they would be located. And then also, she at that time gave you, the commission, and the applicant a list of possible stipulations and conditions for approval. They were listed 1 through 10, and I agreed with those stipulations and conditions, and that is in that memo. Then we were talking about the nitrogen issue, and I wrote a letter to you guys responding to some of those issues, and that's dated December 6th. Specifically, there was comments at the public hearing on September 13th about the potential for phosphorus and nitrogen migration through the soil. I researched a bunch of studies. I referenced those studies. They were submitted on the record in your last public hearing. They'll be submitted again because they're pertinent. Regarding the there was a study that was important, and I gave you the reference. It is from the EPA, U.S. EPA, and it's entitled Nutrient Criteria Technical Guidance, Manual Wetlands, and it's dated June 2008. It talks about migration of nitrogen and phosphorus through the soil. As a result of some of those studies, we looked into this issue a lot further. George Logan is added to the team. After me, you're going to hear from him about some detailed studies that he conducted that is going to kind of talk about this in more detail. I touched upon it. I referenced documents, and he did that as well, and he found out some more pertinent and more recent studies that he'll mention. So that's pretty much what I got in general, and you'll hear more detail next time.
Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. George Logan for the record, Rima Ecological Services. I do have a report, and who do I give it to? This way. So for the record, I'm hold a master's degree in natural resources science, my concentration in conservation biology. I'm certified as a soil scientist like my colleague. I'm certified as a wetland scientist, actually also with my colleague here, Sigrun Godwell. We're co-authors of the report. I'm also a senior ecologist through the Ecological Society of America. And my background is also as a wildlife biologist. I'm not going to go into this report. As you can see, it's a little hefty. I'm sure we'll have opportunities once you folks look at it. You'll have some questions. I'm sure you'll probably need to have me explain a few things. So what I'm going to do is to kind of tell you what we did and what our conclusions are. And hopefully the rationales and the reasons for the conclusions will be evident from the report and as we go through the public hearing process. First time that we were out in the field was, let's see, December 4th. Then we returned on December 9th. First time I was there on my lonesome. And the second time I was joined with my colleague, Sigmund Godwin, who was also here. The first time that I was there, I decided that I needed to kind of characterize a little bit the sort of the chemistry, if you will, of the wetland, especially the watercourse. Now, the watercourse it's an interesting situation. So it's about 75 feet or so on average away. You can kind of see that little signature there from the edge of the wetland. It's on an adjacent property, and that flows all the way down about 2,600 linear feet. It joins another watercourse on the way, another possibly intermittent watercourse. Then, of course, it goes to our very nice perennial watercourse, which is the Salmon Brook. The watershed for this depends on how you look at it. I looked at it in two different ways. I used USGS stream stats, widely available online. It kind of draws some lines, and you can agree or disagree with them. We usually agree with them. And then I also looked at the Connecticut environmental conditions online and the 2006 topography, and I did my own little scaling. So we have about 29 to 30 acres of watershed as the watercourse goes by the site. Now, is it intermittent or perennial? The only way that I could determine that in such a small watershed, usually if you have a small watershed of 30 acres, it's going to be an intermittent, but the geohydrology of this area is peculiar, is that you have some elevated areas, a lot of sand and gravel, you have an alluvial plain, and so the discharge to this brook is probably a little higher than you would have for its watershed. So it might be somewhere between an intermittent and perennial. We call it semi-perennial. It's not really a definition, but the way that you can figure that out is by going to the stream and looking for the biota, the organisms that live there, and that gives you an indication of whether you have a perennial or not stream. But it is a watercourse, and we know it connects to a very unimpaired fishery. So the first day I did the water quality sampling. I took the samples to close to where I am, to Phoenix Environmental Laboratories, and you can see it's attached to the report. That's already been submitted. And it gave us a whole bunch of things that we tested. We tested for nutrients, obviously. That's one of our major concerns here. We tested for heavy metals. We also tested for the mineralogy to kind of give us an idea of where it's sat. And what we found out was, and this again is winter. So winter is different than spring when you do water quality sampling. So it's a little more elevated, probably, because there's not a lot of biological activity, although there's plenty, as I will explain in the swamp itself. And we have total nitrogen of 1.11 milligrams per liter. It's kind of at the threshold of being somewhat impaired, if you will. Nitrate, which is one of the nutrients that we're very much interested in here, is 0.94, a little bit elevated, but not too bad at all. And as far as the bad stuff, there's no bad stuff in it. As far as, say, zinc or cadmium or copper or lead, all below any thresholds, even couldn't even be measured by the instruments. But we see things like calcium is pretty high, magnesium is pretty high, and so that all kind of indicates what the mineralogy is there, which is, as you look at the report, you'll see. The second time we came around, we said, okay, we have a swamp, and the swamp is the one that's receiving the potential already treated effluent from the septic system. So what is this swamp going to do? Because as you remember from your own consultant, Dr. Danzer, who's I'm very familiar with, and he's very familiar with me, we work together, he had some concerns about the ability of the swamp to be able to denitrify and uptake nitrogen that's in excess of 1 milligram per liter, say, because that's sort of the threshold for something that's impaired or not impaired. So we took a little look, and I put my soil scientist hat on. I went out there with my auger. And the first thing that was interesting, so our augers, as you probably know, you've seen them, is about 42 inches tall. And the first thing that I did is I put my auger down and I went all the way down the surface. Muck. So I had up to 42 plus inches of muck in some places before the stream. So before the stream and to the edge of the wetland. And so it averaged maximum 42 plus, and in some places we were probably 26 to 30 or something like that. So an average in the 30s. That's a lot of muck. And why am I saying this? Well, one of the things that Dr. Danzer said, and I don't fault him because he looked at faulty information. So he made some determinations based on the NRCS soil survey mapping, which says that we have a SACO soil here in this general vicinity of this wetland, and ain't that. And the reason he was mentioning that is because he realizes, as I realize, as we probably all realize, that organic swamps are highly efficient in denitrifying. We're basically taking nitrate, nitrogen, and transforming it through microbial activity, both aerobic and anaerobic, to non-bioavailable nitrogen gas, which we all breathe right now. So he said it was SACO, but in actuality it's not. This is an organic swamp. It's not his fault. It's just bad mapping, and he didn't go in and do what I did, what we did. So we took samples, we took them up to the Yukon Soil Laboratory, which we like to use. They're extremely reasonable and very, very efficient. Most of what they do is for agricultural purposes, but we use them for, because they give us a whole bunch of information. Among those things that I had him do is to kind of look at the chemistry of the soil, which I won't bother you with now, but what I will bother you, and it's the last 2 pages of a report, an attachment, is, so what I did is I looked and I said, okay, I want to get 2 samples. One, I want it to be representative of the deeper stuff, which has this muck that goes the depth of my auger plus. And I want to get a sample that's representative of an intermediate situation, which is probably closer to the wetland boundary, because you have, obviously, the more you go into the swamp, the deeper the muck gets, and the further you come out, the less so happens. So I did 2 different, so we can kind of have so the one that's a little further away from the wetland boundary and closer to the stream, had organic matter. So we basically went down, say, 24 inches or so, collected a sample, put it in a Ziploc bag, and off it went. And the organic matter content, this is lost by ignition, so they basically burn it, and then they tell you, they can figure out by measuring what's lost in ignition, and 71.1% organic matter. That's pretty darn high. And the second one, which is the other representative one, only had 16.3, still pretty high in organics, and that was a sandy loam. And what's underneath this, so SACO is a silt loam, which means it has fines in it. But what we found here underneath, at depth, whether it was, say 28 inches or 42 plus, in the intermediate, was that we had a loamy sand, or loamy fine sand. So this is very transmissive. So that, and why I'm saying that is because what's going to be coming down from the hill under the septic system is going to hit that layer, and the layer is going to be the groundwater. And it's going to basically carry along, express itself down into the swamp, and it's going to be intermingling, if you will, with the organics also. So, in his most recent report, Dr. Danzer, as you can see, I think he realized that what the applicant had done is had heard the concerns from this commission and from the public, and went back and changed a few things. And one of the things they did, which we could have gone into a little more detail, but I'm sure we will in the future, is that the septic system has been enhanced by giving additional best management practices, including a system that's called Soil Air, which I've been familiar with from another project that I did down in Guilford. And I actually met the inventor, if you will, of Mr. Potts. And what we found out is by using the soil air system, which aerates what's coming through, and as I mentioned before, your best way of taking care of nitrogen is to have both aerobic and anaerobic conditions. So anaerobic is the ones where there's saturation, not much oxygen, and aerobic are the ones where there is oxygen, because there's two sets of bacteria, and if you get both of them working, your denitrification or your nitrification is at a very high degree. So we increased our attenuation of nitrogen by, well, one of the ways we did it is by the soil air, and that itself gave us an additional 20% reduction of nitrogen. So that was significant. So you'll see through this report that we have, in the first part, and I'm not going to go into it too much at this point, I'm almost done with my remarks for the night. I just want to give you sort of a flavor of what we've done. The first section is direct responses to your town consultant's report, point by point. Some of the, there's 4 issues that he had, and so we explained those. And then the subsequent ones, we take a little more of a deep dive to the science, so a little more technical in nature. What we've done is we've gone and looked at studies that we already knew about from other projects we've done of what swamps, what these kinds of conditions do as far as denitrification, nutrient uptake, et cetera, and how these swamps are extremely protective of especially flowing waters, which is the more sensitive resource here is the flowing waters, not the swamp itself. Although, if it was a swamp that was sensitive, that was what you would call a oligotrophic system, one where there's low nutrient availability, and we're dumping more nutrients even if at a low concentration, it could have an effect on vegetation, on fauna and flora. But this is a mesotrophic system, which means kind of in the middle of, it's not eutrophic, loaded with nutrients, not oligotrophic, which is less nutrients, is right smack in the middle. And one of the ways you can see that, not only from the test that we did on the soils, but also with the vegetation that's growing there. So if you see skunk cabbage and sensitive fern, typically you have a mesotrophic system. So moderate availability or moderate fertility. So you'll see the deep dive that we did, some of these meta studies that we did, and we tried to answer all the questions that Dr. Danzer had, not only in his more recent report, but also in the report that he had published before, which he references in this current report. So in essence, that's all I'm going to give you for the night. And there's photographs and other figures. And
These are 3 of the papers.
okay, great. And my colleague tells me that we're going to also give you, I mean, we have a large reference bibliography, if you will, of the studies that we looked at specifically. And here's some additional ones that are, so we call seminal studies on these kinds of swamps and nitrate removal in streams and riparian areas. And there's 3 copies of each for the commission.
They're actually not additional ones, they're just the most important ones.
You want to introduce yourself, and then we'll sit down?
Okay, I'm Sigrun Gadwell, for the record. Qualifications very similar to him. I went to Brown instead of URI, but
Shame on me.
anyway. So there's one paper there that I have 6 copies of. How many commissioners are there? 7 or 6?
We can provide additional copies if you're interested.
Because I'm recused.
Okay, yeah, so it's just three of the particularly important ones. I've made either 3 copies and one of them 6.
And we've utilized these studies and others to come to the conclusions in our report. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Upload all of those and make them part of the hearing record once it opens.
Does the applicant have anyone else who wants to present tonight?
No, that's that concludes our presentation. I think, just to sum up, I guess, what you're hearing from our professionals tonight, the proposed development from the initial application based on feedback that we received during the initial process and thereafter has been reduced in size, reduced in height, so that we went from a 4-story building to a 3-story building, from 48 units to 42 units. As you might have noticed, based on Mr. Moran's explanation, almost all of those units, 40 of them are one-bedroom units. So we're not talking about an enormous number of bedrooms on site either. The septic system has been further enhanced beyond the requirements for Farmington Valley Health District in order to reduce any potential nitrogen, bringing it below the safe water standards so that we can ensure that there's no health or safety issues associated with it. The building and the parking itself are in the same area as the initial application that was approved in 2007. And actually, when you factor in the additional parking that was improved, is a lighter use of the site in terms of coverage, parking, number of cars. The stormwater system, is sized so that there will be no uncontrolled runoff, so that all the way through the 50-year storm event, so that everything is treated on site and there's no excess runoff from the building or from the parking lot. And, just to, as Mr. Logan and Mr. Sipperly were referring to, we're not obviously impacting any wetlands. We're not doing any work in the wetlands. We are in the 100-foot upland review area, and partially in the 200-foot review area from a stream. But none of the work we're doing is going to damage any of the wetlands or have any material adverse impact. To give a sense of, what we're talking about here, again, obviously we've got a site right now that is, somewhat of an attractive nuisance and, isn't providing any real value, isn't really producing any taxes for the town. And I think, what we're trying to provide is something that can produce, high quality housing. It's going to increase the tax base of the community, increase property values by virtue of not having an undeveloped site. And, it's going to improve the stormwater management, improve landscaping, improve, everything else associated with it. So thank you for having us. I'm going to let my attorney, Tim Hollister, wrap up, but I appreciate it and happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Tim Hollister. Just to wrap up, the goal tonight was to explain the revisions and try to explain that we think we have addressed the one remaining environmental issue from November, December, and that's all we have to present tonight, Mr. Chair, and thank you for your patience.
Thank you, Mr. Hollister. Does the commission, any of the commission members have any questions while we have the applicant and the professionals here? Obviously, we'll have another opportunity at the public hearing, but if this presentation raised any questions, now's the time. Hearing none.
Thank you.
Thank you. Before we move to the next agenda item, I think we need a motion to put this to a public hearing. Is that correct?
Yeah, if I may quickly, so Cameron Colville, the town wetland agent. So we appreciate all of the revisions that have gone through this plan thus far. You've obviously, listened to the town and done a lot of changes to address some of the concerns. One such concern that I believe, has been addressed but not necessarily solved is the nitrogen loading that is possible from this project. While it's been greatly reduced, there is still nitrogen that would be exiting the septic system. And per Dr. Danzer's comments, the reduction to 7.3 milligrams per liter is a significant reduction. But then he does go on to say that it is recognized as a pollutant, and the proposed leaching from the subsurface sewage system qualifies as a significant impact according to the definition within the regulations. Such regulation that he is referring to would be the definition of a significant activity in the town regulations, any activity which substantially diminishes the natural capacity of an inland wetland or watercourse to support aquatic, plant, or animal life and habitats, prevent flooding, supply water, assimilate water, facilitate drainage, provide recreation or open space, or perform other functions. And so with that, looking at the nitrogen that is being introduced to the system, while we recognize that, a wetland system of this nature is able to process nitrogen and, process it safely and may not have an adverse impact. Ultimately, to hold a public hearing, we both find it or I would assume that the commission would both find it in the interest of the town to hold a public hearing on this, as well as the definition for that is may have a significant impact, is how the regulation is worded. And I'm not sure about the rest of the commission, but in my personal opinion, while it was sort of addressed, I don't believe that the applicant's team has necessarily said specifically that the nitrogen will pose no negative impacts, just that it's unlikely to have negative impacts. I don't think we had any sort of definitive answer on that, and so in my eyes, that qualifies as may have an impact or a significant impact to the wetland or watercourse, and especially looking at, it's not up anymore, but looking at the plans, we do see that the septic system is right at the edge of the hill, subsurface, and then following down that slope would eventually lead to the wetland system. Water flows downhill, and so carrying with it nutrients and such. So I just wanted to state that for the record, that if the commission votes to push it to a public hearing, that it would be because there may be a significant impact, as well as just being in the best interest of the town.
Is there any way that we can ask Dr. Danzer to come to the public hearing, since he provided us with this letter, but we don't know where he stands on it now? I mean, we've heard a few things. I think if we're going to have a public hearing, we should ask him to join us.
Yeah, I would agree. I believe that, and I'm not 100% sure on this, but I believe that he had some sort of medical emergency, either himself or a family member, and he had planned to be here tonight to address that, but was unable to. So we will hopefully be able to get him for the public hearing, should the commission vote to send it to a public hearing.
Yeah, I mean, and that's the kind of discussion that I think is more appropriate for during the public hearing than just an informal presentation.
Okay. Any other comments from the commission at this point? So again, is there an interest in moving this to a public hearing? And if so, I'd ask for a motion to that extent. And you'd have to state the reasons for a motion. I'm just curious, I wasn't at the prior hearings. There was a public hearing at the prior hearing, so there was a significant attendance by the public?
Yes.
Okay, so, the public interest would be another, if I'm not mistaken, Mr. Roberts said that public interest as well would be another basis for a public hearing.
I've moved that we'd have a public hearing on the 37 Harvard Avenue property. I think the reasons are because of public interest and because we also have some questions that need to be answered, and hopefully too, some of the things within the book that Vessel gave us were a few months old and need to be updated, like the Farmington Valley Health District, what happened with that application and things like that. So I make the motion.
We haven't gotten a letter from them regarding the new proposal that Vessel has given, correct, Renee? We're still waiting on a response from him.
Okay, so we have a motion. Do we have a second? Okay, and do you have any further commentary on the motion, Sue? Anyone else? Further discussion? Okay, all in favor of moving this to a public hearing based on the motion?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstention? Okay, so we'll move it to a public hearing. So when's the next, when can we schedule this for a public hearing?
Our next meeting is February 14th.
Valentine's Day.
Oh, yippee-ki-yay.
7 o'clock.
So everyone has to bring their spouse or significant other to the
And lots of
public hearing. All right. I don't think there's anything further on this agenda item, so thank you all for coming tonight, and I'm sure we'll see you at the next meeting, and we'll see some of our citizens there as well. All right. You're going to go, Fred?
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay. We have an RFR. Can we move that to the, there are a lot of people here, permit applications on the agenda. The RFR, I'm assuming you're just going to report on that, Cameron?
So the RFR actually is going to be a permit application. So they did apply for a
Okay.
permit. It was sort of a combination of an RFR and a permit application, just to see if our regulations would apply. But I'll get into it, but it doesn't look like it's an exempt activity, and so they would need a permit.
Okay.
So this will be the receipt date for that permit application.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yes.
Okay, so we're just going to address, well,
It's interesting.
Excuse myself.
yeah, I didn't see it as a permit application on the agenda.
Yeah. No,
Okay.
the permit was attached because I didn't see it.
Okay.
And then there's a whole packet.
So how do we want to deal with that? If it's now being accepted as a permit application tonight?
I think that's something that we would probably vote on.
Okay.
Yeah, to accept it as a permit application
But-
and have this be the receive date. Because so if you look in the packet, wherever I might have it, so on the application for Salmon Brook Street Route 20, it is checked off for permit as well as checked off for request for review.
All right, so I think in order to move this off of the request for review to a permit application, we need a vote to accept it as a permit application.
Correct.
We have that right? Okay, we need a motion to that effect.
We gotta wait.
Gotta wait for trouble people come in.
Oh,
Yeah.
they left when I wasn't looking. I think Fred's gone. He has,
Fred's
Yeah.
on.
Yeah.
Well, Nick's in the back.
okay.
Everyone's not here, just so you know.
Did she leave?
Everyone's not on, just so everybody knows.
Okay.
Would the commission like for the presentation to commence before the vote or after from the applicant?
I think, well, yeah, I guess, in order to make an informed decision on the vote, we should hear from the applicant.
Right.
So is someone here on agenda item number 4? Request for review, Salmon Brook Route 20 to Granby, East Granby
Yes.
Town Line. Follow sign.
Yes, I didn't get the number. Do you have the presentation? This is for the west branch, or the east branch of the Salmon Brook. I'm hoping you can get the nitrogen issues taken care of before it hits the east branch. I'm Paula Shaw. I'm actually an East Granby resident, but this project covers both Granby and East Granby.
May we have your address for the record, please?
It's 20 Winding Hills Road in East Granby, Connecticut.
Thank you.
I'm a paddler, and I'm kind of representing canoers, kayakers, stand-up paddleboarders that like to paddle in the Salmon Brook. And we've been paddling there for a long time. And in the past few years, there's been some really big trees going down, like really big, diameters of 2.5 feet to 4 or 5 feet. And that's a lot more than just a little chainsaw can handle. So what I had wanted to do was hire an arborist to come and cut some trees in accordance with the DEP large woody debris fact sheet, and just cut a trail down the river from Route 20 to the Farmington River. And at this point, there's 6 trees down in the town of Granby section of the Salmon Brook. So I guess, yeah, we're gonna get a permit. So this is a map. Route 20 is up there. This red line is the East Granby town line. The blue dots represent downed trees, the big downed trees on the west branch or east branch of the Salmon Brook. Each one of those would have to be cut in accordance with the fact sheet. I'm assuming you guys are really familiar with this. And so then if you go to the next slide, this is the fact sheet. I kind of assume you guys are probably a lot more familiar with it than I am. But the next slide shows the navigation trail recommendation. And the way that works is the arborist will review the flow of the river and then cut a section of the tree, not the whole tree, just a section, but wide section, and then create a navigable trail through the Salmon Brook down, I guess, for here, down to the, if you go to the next slide, who's doing that? Are you, oh, okay. The little beeper thing, I was like, dude, can you just stay here? So the underlined yellow describes what our arborist will be doing. And the gentleman, Timo Trees, has experience. He's been cutting other locations.
What's the name of it again? I'm sorry.
It's Timo Trees, LLC, TIMO Trees, LLC. And he's familiar with the methods for cutting according to the DEP fact sheet. So it's pretty straightforward. Hopefully we don't have to have a...
So are you cutting and removing, or cutting and loading and creating the V's like they talked about in the pamphlet?
I believe he's just cutting and moving the section that he's cutting to a place where it doesn't go
Loading it
downstream
again.
and do damage down there.
Like one cut and then the tree naturally moves out of the way, or?
Looking at some of these trees, it looks like he's gonna have to do 2 cuts, because with all the flooding that we've had this year, most of those trees have not moved.
Yeah, I know the trees you're talking about. It is a mess back there.
Yeah. But it doesn't look like if we did one cut, they'd still just sit there.
Yeah, I know, there's some massive trees. It's pretty wild.
More or less, yeah.
Did you get approval from East Granby of the trees?
They actually gave me an administrative review application, so I can just do it that way. And
I'm just wondering if they move downstream, they're moving right then to East Granby next, thing to get stuck on those other ones.
I know. Well, none of the big ones have moved.
Okay.
We've been.
But I mean, when you cut them and they're repositioned or something?
Well, we just take a section out of it. It's not
Yeah.
not the whole tree. It'll just be a section. And then that section gets moved off to the side of the river.
Well,
so
it says
doesn't
it's supposed to be
wash down.
anchored as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
So somebody's going to need to watch that.
Is this work going to be done in the wild and scenic section of the river?
Yes.
Have you reached out to
And I
constituents?
have reached out, and actually I have Mike Kramen, who is the chairman of the Lower Farmington River and Wild and Salmon Brook Wild and Scenic Committee. And he's also a fan of this area. He loves paddling there. So I was actually asking them for a grant to pay
I was going to say,
the arborists. They won't pay the permitting fees, but they will pay the arborists, so.
So are they going to comment on the, assuming this becomes a permit, if it becomes a permit, are they going to comment on the permit application? The Wild and Scenic Committee?
Do you want to comment, Mike?
Well, we're not in a public hearing yet, but.
Oh, okay. You have to do it later? Okay.
Yeah, I'm just thinking of the constituent groups, Wild and Scenic Committee, Farmington River Watershed Association, those types of groups.
Okay.
Might be helpful.
Well, both of those organizations are aware of it because I did ask them for money. I do have to reach out to all the owners,
yeah.
the
Yeah, that would
property
be helpful.
owners, and get their
Letters
okays.
from the agencies as well?
Pardon?
Letters from the agency as well? Documenting they approve it or whatever?
Oh, okay. Well, I figured they'll approve it if they'll pay for it.
Well, yeah, I'm just I'm just
can do
weighing the public interest in the application. One of the
Gotcha.
things we're considering. So it might be helpful if you get input to the commission from these other constituent groups as to what
Okay.
position they take.
That would be great. Okay, I can do that, but thank you.
Cameron, do you have comments?
Yeah, so just to clarify what's sort of going on with this one, since it is on the agenda as a request for review, in my initial communications with Paula Saff, I had, gone back and forth with her a little bit via email about the project, and I had originally said in my original email that it would probably require a permit. And then later I got a little mixed up in my own head, to be quite honest. And I think just some communication was lost. And so I was thinking of something else in a different town, to be quite honest, that was an agricultural exemption. And so I was thinking that this would be an exempt activity. And in reviewing the town regulations, it would not qualify as an exempt activity, unfortunately. What the commission could do, since the permit application for tonight, it was checked off for both a permit application and a request for a review. We can accept it as a permit application, and either it's up to the commission if you believe that it's something that you would like me to you would like to delegate to me to issue the permit, and I can do so administratively, or the commission can wait until the next regularly scheduled meeting and vote on it themselves if they believe there's, potential public support or opposition that would like to be addressed at the next meeting.
Does the commission have a preference? Speaking personally, I think we should make, determine by motion whether to accept it as a permit application, and then we could consider it at the next regularly scheduled meeting, right?
Yep.
Yep. But that's just my personal.
I think especially since we're asking for, additional information with the letters. so-
Yeah, the letters and stuff.
Okay.
What's the permit for?
To cut the trees.
Well, to cut the trees, but what's the permit like? What's the permit called? What kind of permit? Work permit?
This would just be a general inland wetlands and watercourses permit,
Okay.
if that's what you're
Activities
asking.
within the regulated.
Oh, it's
Yeah.
activities, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, because, the cutting will be taking place right in the water.
Sure. I see, okay.
So I'll make a motion that we
Working hard
have
tonight.
permit request, accept the permit request.
I'll second.
Further discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
I don't know that Arel's still with us, but,
No, she's
okay. So we'll accept it as a permit application. We put it on the next agenda item, the next agenda for the next meeting?
Yes.
Sorry, it's been a long day.
No worries.
Okay, great. So now we can go back to the rest of the agenda.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks for coming tonight. Number 5, permit request, 371 North Granby Road. permit application to modify an existing approval for a 35 by 50 outdoor storage area to a 70 by 50 outdoor storage area within a regulated area. This was received in December and continued. There was a lot of discussion about, as I recall, there was a lot of discussion about trying to set the parameters of what the new area would look like and seeing whether it was feasible for the tenant to operate within that. Cameron, do you have any comments? Or I've seen Mr.
Yep. So I went out with the property owner earlier today. Thank you. And I was able to snap a few pictures. And so a little bit of background on this site, just for the record. Permit modification, as you were saying, to extend a 35 by 50 foot outdoor storage area to 70 by 50 feet. The tenant had some previous issues with meeting those space restrictions with his business. And so at the last meeting, it was asked that we see a little bit more cooperation from the tenant and the property owner. And so I grabbed these pictures at my meeting earlier today. I'll pass them down. So you'll be able to see that the little swale trench was then lined with stone to stabilize it. Sorry, they're all kind of one.
Sorry.
Or they're all different photos. I only made the one copy just to pass down. But so that trench was lined with stone to prevent erosion that was going straight into the stream from the parking lot. The storage area, it can be seen marked with orange paint on the snow there. That is the edge of the 70 feet, and there are one line of tractors that are still outside of that area. So the space restriction was not met, unfortunately. And again, that was taken today. But it is a substantial decrease in excess past that area, being only one tractor's width beyond. So certainly an improvement. And then there were boulders placed at the edge of the parking lot to prevent vehicles from parking on the septic system and or leach field, as they've been previously doing. I think it's just worth pointing out that the applicant has been making attempts to comply with the requests from the commission. Ultimately, this permit modification is to increase to the 70 by 50 foot storage area. And it was asked that the applicant and or tenant meet that 70 by 50 foot storage area prior to this meeting to show that that's actually viable. And unfortunately, it appears that that was not met. But showing the other compliance with the request from the commission, I think it's certainly steps in the right direction, and decreasing that the distance beyond that 70-foot storage area is, again, at least an attempt to comply. Ultimately, it's up to the commission to decide how you would like to vote. But I would just like to clarify that this is a request for a permit modification, and it is up to the commission to grant that or not. But if they're not in the 70 by 50 foot storage area after this is voted upon, then regardless, it would still be a violation, which would need to be solved. And I would like to point out as well that when I went out, there were a few tractors that were out in the front of the building, which I believe is not allowed per zoning regulations. I, not being the ZO, don't have those regulations at my fingertips at the front of my mind here, but I believe that that is a violation. And so either they would have to be removed from the site or, that would have to be moved into the back where there already is not enough storage for those. So,
Well,
If I could just interject, because I'm not sure we have a quorum without a will, because I've recused myself on this matter last time because of my personal and professional relationship with, we have John Pagliaro here as one of the members of the CELC, but I recused myself because of my personal and professional relationship with Brian Guarco, so I can't deliberate on this one. So, but we certainly can ask questions of the,
well, it's been going on since before you were here. And
Right.
they originally asked for the 35 by 50. And for months, no matter what, he couldn't keep it to 35 to 50. Then Brian came back last month and said, okay, well, give me 50 by 70 and I will make sure he stays to it. And it was like, okay, 50 by 70 or we're done. And it's not 50 by 70. So clearly he needs more room and it's not an appropriate location for the business.
anyone else on the commission?
I'd like to hear what they have to say.
Yes, absolutely.
Sure.
John Pagliaro, 19 Day Street South, member of the LLC and property owner. I can't answer the questions regarding Brennan's equipment in the back, but I can say, in addition to what you said regarding the boulders, we added up front to prevent people from parking near the stream, which was happening in the past. We did do that, and our intention is fully to get him into compliance so we can put up a stockade fence, vinyl white stockade fence to block the area. So.
The machines that are outside of the somewhat permitted area of the orange line made today were just placed there before the last snowstorm that we got. So I moved them from the front to the back because of having to plow. So those would be moved within the next week, but other than
Back to
that,
the front.
no, they'd be gone. But because of the snow, I had to get them out front, so that's why they were put out back.
So we can't vote on this now anyway because we don't have a quorum. So do we just wait till the February 14th meeting to vote on this?
Yeah, I think we'll have to push this until we have a quorum.
Yep.
But it gives you another opportunity to address some of Susan's issues with non-compliance.
It's almost been a year now.
One-man operation, very busy. No one wants to work, so that's
I
what
get it.
happens.
All right, so we'll, do we need a motion for that, Mr. Roberts, to move it to the next meeting?
No, I think just keep it on the agenda.
Yeah.
Have enough
Yeah.
people to make a
Yeah.
motion.
That would be my
We'll move it
motion.
to the next
We'll
meeting.
just keep it on the agenda and move it to the next meeting. So we'll see you on Valentine's Day.
Get that fun.
Thanks.
Thank you. Can I know you're not public for wrestling, but can I comment on this right here?
It's not a public
No.
hearing, sorry.
Not
This isn't a public hearing.
No, sir.
No.
if you have any comments that you'd like to submit to the commission, you can email me and I can give you my email address after the
Sure, you
meeting.
better do that.
Okay, thank you. We'll go to the next agenda item, which is 200 Simsbury Road, Empire Solar Solutions, permit application to construct a ground-mounted solar array and associated utilities within a regulated area. Is anyone here? on
They're
that
on
application?
online.
Okay,
Hi, can you hear me?
Yep.
yes.
Okay. My name is Stephanie, I'm with Empire Solar. I'm here representing our company and the owner. If I have permissions, I can share my screen to share the engineering. Everybody
Yep.
Visible?
Yes.
Okay. So this is the site plan showing the proposed location for the ground mount right here next to a detached garage, which we will also be installing panels on. So this is a hybrid system, ground mount onto active mount. We have the wetland overlay here. It's really small, so I have a bigger image of a screenshot from the GIS maps. This just doesn't have the array superimposed, but it's going to be just about right here. I know all these other items on the agenda tonight were very detailed. I don't know what information you need from us as far as, I mean, there's no runoff into the wetlands. We're not imposing on them in any way. So if anybody has any questions, I'm happy to answer them. Pretty straightforward project.
Well, unless the commission has questions, can we hear from staff on this? Have you reviewed this?
Yeah. So a couple of questions that I had for the project were, so looking at where the ground-mounted panels are to be placed, looking at the map provided by the applicant, it looks like the panels will be placed right amongst a few trees. I was just curious, are those trees to remain, or are there going to be trees taken down for these ground-mounted panels?
We do have a plan to remove 2 trees to accommodate for the ground mount.
Okay. So being that this is the first time that we've gotten the application, this is the receive date per the state statute. So we're unfortunately able to act upon it at this meeting. But for when you come back to the next regularly scheduled meeting, I would just like to say that, that should be part of your plan to show, anything and everything that you're planning to do, and that includes tree removal. And then also, I did not see any erosion controls on any of these maps. I'm not sure if I missed them or if, they were just in the wording, and I might have missed that, but I didn't see any erosion controls, and so that should be also put on the plan, any and all erosion and sediment controls that are to be used during this project, just given the proximity to the wetland area as mapped. So I believe those are my only comments on it, and if the rest of the commission has any questions or comments.
Yeah, I mean, I had a hard time following where the location, particularly I was concerned about the ground-mounted solar panels, but without a site plan which delineates them well, it was hard for me to ascertain exactly what was going on in the site. I don't know if any of my fellow commissioners had that issue.
It's a big system, it's 52 panels.
So I think it would be helpful to have some sort of a site plan so we can follow the location and identify things like Cameron just mentioned, which are trees in the vicinity, which obviously will need to be taken down, and where the erosion control will be placed on the site, things like that. So that would be extremely helpful before the next meeting.
Okay, can you provide some more information about the erosion control? This isn't something that we're specifically familiar with, so any guidance would be appreciated.
Yeah, so as a starting point, just looking at your cover page here, the photo on the top left of the cover page, if the commissioners can see that, I think that's a decent photo to start with. And that shows, where the panels are to be placed. So if on that you were to draw in and, point to which trees are to be removed, any soil that's going to be excavated, where that would be piled up, And as far as erosion controls go, it's ultimately up to the applicant for a site like this. But given the area based on the imagery, it looks like silt fence would be a good one for that. So you could always consult the they're now the 2023 Connecticut guidelines for erosion and sedimentation control, and so that will give you a few options and also give you detailed instructions on how to install those options.
Okay.
So do we need a motion to accept the permit?
Does it matter?
I don't think there's a permit yet.
Yeah, they did apply.
Yeah.
They apply,
They have a permit requested, so
we can't, can we vote on it until next month? We just received it.
yeah, I think we could vote on it to accept it, and then next month we decide on it, right?
Permit's incorrect.
What is it?
The permit is incorrect. The permit reads 26 panels on the roof of the garage and 26 panels to be placed on the ground, but then the letters say 47 with 21 panels in the rear of the yard.
Could the applicant clarify that, if you were able to do
Yeah,
that?
that must have been an error. So 26 panels are proposed for the garage roof and 21 panels for the ground mount.
So you'd have to correct that on your application
Yeah.
so that it's clear. And, you know, there's, and I don't want to add to Cameron's duties, but you could always reach out to the town and kind of go through the application before it gets to this point, so you know, kind of what we need in order to consider the permit application. But I guess we could consider whether we want to accept this right now, even with the incorrect.
Can we do that?
Just wait. We kick it the next
Yeah, we
month
need
and have
the
them get, they
information,
need to get
right?
their stuff.
Yeah, I
ready.
think we need more information. I'm gathering
Better site
before we.
Also, if I may,
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, so, this is still just the receive date of this application. The applicant did clarify the error for the record, and so while it's not in the actual application materials, it is on the record that the proposed is, now I'm probably going to get it wrong.
21,
but
26.
Yeah, 21, 26. So 21 on the ground, 26 on the roof. And so that has been clarified and put upon the record. It's up to the commission if you would like to have this be the receive date, since we're not voting on it. The applicant can, absolutely come and chat with me, either email, phone, in person, whichever, and we can go through the application and see what the commission would like to see changed and added and such, and then come back at the next meeting. We'll hear those changes and additions, and then the commission could vote, if that sounds good to you guys.
Sounds great.
Yep. Do you need to take a motion for that?
I don't believe so.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I just point out, Cameron, that, with our last wetlands official, there was a lot of frustration on the part of the commission when applications would come before us that we really couldn't, locate things, we didn't see erosion control. And I think we had asked our wetlands official to be a little bit of a gatekeeper and make sure that we had applications that we could actually review when we accept the permit. So if we do that going forward, it'll probably streamline the process a little bit.
All right, absolutely.
Okay, so we'll keep this on the agenda and move it to the next meeting then. Right.
And that's on February 14th, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
When
Thank
do
you.
you need to receive the revisions by? Like, what's the deadline before the next meeting?
At least a week prior, so we can get everything out. That's like the minimum.
Do you have any other questions for the commission, Empire Solar?
Not at this time, but if anything comes up, who would be the best person to contact?
Our staff, I think.
Yeah, that would be me, Cameron Colville, and you can reach me at wetlandsagent@granby-ct.gov.
Wetlands agent, I'm sorry, can you repeat that one more time?
Yep, wetlandsagent@granby-ct.gov.
Okay, excellent. All right, so we'll get those revisions made. If we have any questions, we'll reach out, but we'll have those to you before the next meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Have a great night.
You too.
Okay, item 5C, 215 Salmon Brook Street, East Granby, Granby Little League, permit application to construct a two-story, 18 by 14 foot press box for Field 2 within a regulated area. Is anyone here to speak to that? Come on up to the podium and give us your name and address, please.
Oh, okay.
Good evening. How are you? My name is Chris Perry. I'm the Vice President of East Granby, Granby Little League, and a Granby resident here, 7 Brianwood Lane in Granby, Connecticut. Just a quick note, the proposed two-story building is actually be 17 and a half by 14. So as a novice to this whole experience, what would you like to know, and what can I help you with?
Well, we have your application.
Yep.
And I'm sure we've all looked at it. So if you just want to give us a brief overview, what's going on, why you need it.
Okay.
And it's not necessarily within our purview as to why you need it, but it might help us kind of navigate through this.
Okay. So the proposed two-story press box is to not only enhance the experience of the Little League players, but it also helps with all of our volunteers when we host tournament play. Obviously, these tournaments start at the regional level, and if they're lucky enough and good enough, they can go to Williamsport to play there. So not only would it house the press box for games to be called for those regular season games and tournament games, but it also would be storage for our SAM Pro, which helps us to maintain all the fields and make sure they're up to par and they're safe, and also equipment and things that need to be stored during the winter. So it would serve 2 purposes. Currently what's housed there is a storage shed, which is approximately 10 by 6 that lays on skids and 3/4 inch process. So what we're looking to do is relocate that 10 by 6 shed to Field 5, which is, I think, in the plan, because that shed has seen better days, and it would make for obviously a more useful there. Once it's been relocated, then we are going to put in 6 pillars rather than a foundation. So there will be far less impact to the wetlands that they currently the location's at. So let's see. I think I put in my most of what we were looking for in the proposed narrative. So I don't know if you need anything additional on top of that. I'd be more than happy to provide any more information if I didn't clarify.
So does the commission have questions before we ask Cameron to weigh in on this? Why don't you tell us?
Yeah, sure.
You've got.
So, yeah, I went back and forth with you via email.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, absolutely. And, we clarified where that shed was being moved to. I asked if they would be, doing any utilities or anything like that, and if so, to show them on the plans. You're not going to be doing any utilities, is that correct?
Once we relocate the existing shed to Field 4 or Field 5, it will have no utilities. And the existing utilities that are housed at Field 2 will just be reutilized. So there'll be no additional digging required.
Right. And then Also asked you to note on the map where the soil would be stockpiled when excavated for the concrete pad of the press box.
But you're not doing the stop, right?
Yeah, we're doing the piers.
Yeah.
I noted in my narrative that we would stockpile, we would have because of going to piers would be far less material that'd be excavated. And we've talked to the builder and they'll bring it back to their yard. This be stockpiled, so it won't be stockpiled on site.
Right, great. Again, that was just in my email too. So those were the concerns that I had. Otherwise, it is currently maintained as a ball field with lawn and all the associated associations. And so I personally don't see too much issue with this one. It is all in a regulated area. But again, it's currently maintained as a ball field. There's a parking lot between them and then more grass and then a water course. But that's a substantial distance away over, again, a flat parking area. So if the commission has any other questions or comments, I or Chris would be happy to address.
I like the fact that you're putting it on piers because there has been flooding in Salmon Brook Park. It's
Significant flooding.
significant.
Yeah.
So-
Yeah, originally we were thinking about concrete pad and then talking to the builder and it just made a lot more sense because we have another press box on field 1 and that's also on piers. And luckily that has stayed dry.
Yeah. I'm sure you got input from the Department of Public Works that maintains this area. They're good with this?
Yeah.
Anyone else have any questions? No, we do, because I'm not recusing myself. from this one.
Okay.
You get a lot of press coverage at these events that I had to ask the question.
Well, if our teams do well enough, I guess we would. But it's really more for our current situation is folks are, at tables on the sidelines. They can't really see the field well. And, when it's a pretty great experience when all the kids get their names talk, over the loudspeaker. And, we've had, with all the rain, and it was a rainy season for baseball, which made it difficult for tournaments. We're under pop-up tents and we're trying to, get these games in because there's such a deadline to get it to the next level. So, our volunteers would be very happy to be undercover for those games.
I make a motion that we approve the application.
So just to clarify, this is still the received date?
Oh.
Received date.
So we have to wait 30 days.
Correct.
You have to put it on the next agenda.
Or
Yeah.
we could delegate it
To
to,
RFR.
right,
Yeah.
we can delegate it to Cameron.
Yeah, so that would be for anything that's not in a resource area, and on the mapping, it is technically in a resource area. Even though, again, it's maintained as a ball field.
The whole park?
Yeah,
14
pretty much the whole park.
Fence, okay?
Yeah, and so unless the applicant were to have, gone out and delineated it with a soil scientist, which we wouldn't expect you to do.
Right.
But,
I fully anticipated, the people in town, and Cameron both said that, you'll probably get pushed to the 14th or however it might be. So I was fully anticipating that. So
Sorry, we tried.
it's okay.
Great.
I fully understand that. So
See you on Valentine's Day.
yeah.
Thank you.
From Brett Chop.
Keep this on the agenda and we'll move it to the next meeting. See you on Valentine's Day.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, just as a clarification, so if all goes well on the 14th, then it would get approved?
We can't prejudge it.
Yeah.
We'll review your application in due course and
Yep.
we'll vote on it.
Okay.
But do we have to wait 30 days from today? Or,
Oh, this is a special
It's
meeting.
the 24th.
right,
Oh,
I'll actually have to get back to you on that. I'll double check the regulations, but that's a very good question and one I didn't really think about before this meeting,
Neither did we.
unfortunately.
Yeah, because
Thank
our
you,
meeting
thank
was
you for
put off 2
thinking of
weeks,
that.
so,
Yeah.
Even though the application was received on the 9th?
Possibility of a petition?
Well, technically, it was received.
Received till then now.
So the state statute is what regulates us in this regard, and I've been told anecdotally that it's for that reason, but it doesn't specifically cite that in the regulation, and so it does give a regulatory time frame that I believe is 30 days from the received date before the commission can act on it.
Okay.
But again, I'd have to double check that regulation.
Just a follow-up question, because the application was received on the 9th, but it wasn't obviously reviewed by you the 20th till now, does that come into play?
It's accepted at this meeting.
yeah,
Okay,
if our
So
meeting
the
was held
question is,
earlier in the month.
the question is, do we have to wait 30 days under the statute, which I think allows the public the opportunity to ask for a public hearing?
Right.
Gosh, I've spaced on that, I'm sorry. So we're going to have to address that issue then between now and the next meeting.
So it may or may not be the 20th or 14th?
Yeah, stay tuned.
Okay, all right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
Thanks for coming out. All right. Agenda item 5D, 10 High Ridge Drive, Brett and Jennifer Chanel, if I'm saying that right, permit application to construct a 20 by 30 shed within a regulated area. Looks like we have someone here on that permit application. Thank you for your patience. Would you identify yourselves and your address for the record?
Yep, I'm Brett.
And Jen Schnei.
And we're.
Shania? That's
Yeah,
what you said?
you were close enough.
I think that's right. 10 High Ridge Drive.
And I've spent my entire life telling people how to say my last name, so I apologize. Okay, why don't you tell us about your application?
Yeah, so we wanted to put we're calling it a shed, but it's a very large shed. It looks like a barn, but it's not going to be on a foundation. It'll be on crushed gravel. And it's on our lawn, I guess. It's in a spot, actually, we just filled in a pool last year. It was an in-ground pool. So it's in the same area of really where the pool was, I should say.
So the pool's.
Yeah, I think the
This
picture
next-
you can see where the pool is, yeah. Yeah,
That's filled in, you said now?
yeah. It's all.
We needed like $50,000 worth of work, so we we built it up.
Including the maintenance after you.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Kids can run through a hose.
Like when we were kids.
Yeah,
Right.
Is this one of those pre-constructed sheds? You're not going to have construction, it's going to be brought to the site and dropped, or?
I believe the way they do it is it's put together in pieces.
Okay.
But it's like Clotter Farms.
It's Clotter.
Yeah.
Like,
Oh,
It is
yeah.
Clotter
Yeah.
Farms?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Yeah, I think because of the size of it, they put together in pieces.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they'll ship it on road.
Yeah.
Are there trees being taken down there? I can't really tell. No.
No.
Yeah. It's like,
And so the area where the gravel base pad and the shed itself are going to go, that's all currently maintained as lawn?
Yep.
It'll be, yeah, and it'll butt right next up. We have like a parking space right there, so it'll butt right up to that.
Yeah.
So no additional pavement or
it's
anything
lawn.
like that.
Okay, and no other vegetation removal other than grass?
Yeah.
Lawn
grass.
Yeah. And so for excavation of this gravel pad, is there a soil stockpile? Are you guys going to be piling it up? Is it going to be shipped out by whatever company you're using to another area?
Yeah, the Clotter Farms brings in
Fill
to level the place the site off.
Okay, so it's going to be placement of fill. It's not going to be removing any.
No.
Okay.
No.
And do you have any erosion controls proposed? I didn't see any on the plan.
No.
Okay, so I'm just, seeing that on the image there that you provided, that it's all in a regulated area. Too many papers tonight. Let's see. That's too far. Bear with me a moment, sorry. Okay. Yeah, so looking at the image here, the shed that's drawn on looks to be inside what's mapped as wetlands. Is that correct?
It isn't wetlands, but it's like so next to our property, it like drops down and there's
down
wetlands.
the hill, and there's wetlands down the hill.
Gotcha.
I don't know if that's what you were asking.
But this is a flat area where you had the pool, so.
Yeah, our lawn
Yes.
is up top, and then
It drops down.
down
Okay.
the side, yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know about the commission, but I personally would like to see some sort of erosion control to prevent that topsoil that's going to be placed, before it's compacted and leveled and everything, or during that process, to prevent any of that sediment from going down the bank and into the wetland and, filling a wetland.
Okay.
So, just some silk fence that could be provided by the contractor and installed by the contractor.
Okay.
That would probably be your best bet, seeing is that it's just maintained as lawn. And so, that should be a pretty quick and easy thing, but that should be noted on the plan, the location of that silk fence and, yeah.
So we have to come back on February 14th, is that what we're saying?
Yeah, so again, it may not.
We're in the back, and like, no one's I think we're coming back on February 14th. Yeah.
Yeah, so again,
in the same boat.
Date night in Granby.
Yeah. Big, right.
Yeah, don't make dinner, but.
Yeah, unfortunately, even if this were a perfect application and all your I's were dotted and T's crossed, no questions or comments or anything from the commission, perfect application, no brainer, it would still be the receive date. And then the commission is not able to act on it at this time. So after that regulatory waiting period, and again, that's set by the state, then the commission can vote and act on it and, either approve, deny, or, anything else. And so I'll have to double check that, as I said before, but I believe that it's a 30-day waiting period.
So it may not be February, but you'll let us know.
Correct, yeah, I'll email you and let you know.
Can you handle this one, Cameron?
No, because again, this is in a regulated area.
It's in a regulated area.
Yeah.
One time we
I
handled
can-
it.
So this is in the setback area or upland?
No, this is actually in the wetland.
In the wetland? Okay.
Yeah, at least as mapped.
Gotcha.
And so again, without having a soil scientist go out and do a proper delineation, we can't say whether or not this is in an upland review area or the wetland. We have to go off of the mapping, since that is in our regulations as the basis of wetlands in the town.
Even if a pool was,
It's like, how-
even if they got
we
the
were
pool
like, how'd the pool
approved?
get there? We didn't put the pool in. We
Yeah.
bought the house with the pool there.
Yeah, so that
Which
would
is
have
also
been
in there.
permitted.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, they probably did it back then.
But would we have that approval somewhere that we could just transfer to this use case?
No, because it's a new application for a
Okay.
different project, a different use.
Put the shed on the other side of the yard.
Yeah.
You could put the shed on the other side of the yard, but if you don't want to do that,
We have a septic over there.
yeah, so.
There.
Yeah.
I think one time, John, you might remember, I think one time we had a case where it wasn't going to be 30 days the next time we met. And we voted at the halfway point that if nothing else came in for a public hearing, we gave a conditional approval or somebody was waiting for something because it was like the change of seasons. So maybe we can do that, hopefully, on February 14th, is conditionally approve these. Because people are waiting and, it's a 2-week difference.
Yeah, I think that's not a bad idea. It's always, we do like to work with applicants and, we are bound by the state for that waiting period. But absolutely, I think that's certainly a possibility. Yeah. I'm not sure how the rest of the commission feels.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm all for it, but I really almost feel compelled to go back and read this statute.
Yeah.
Because I just have this vague recollection that there's a 20-day period within that 30 days, or maybe it's the whole 30 days where the public can ask for.
Yeah, I can't remember whether it's 14 or 21 where they
Right.
can petition
Yeah.
for the public hearing, because, you know, you don't want to approve something and then find out you need to have a public hearing.
Yeah.
on something that people think they've already gotten an approval for.
We'll just have to
Yeah,
get
I
back to
believe,
everybody.
And
Yeah.
again, I have to double check, but I believe that, yeah, it's 14 days for a petition for a public hearing. And then I think that the sort of logic, I guess, for a 30-day period would be for people to submit comments after that.
That's
before
that's the
meeting.
double level that it's
Right.
coming back to me.
Yeah, yeah. So again, I gotta double check that,
So
but I
it may be
believe it
public
is
hearing.
30 days. Yeah.
Oh, right. All right, so you'll email these nice folks
Yeah, but
about.
we don't understand what you just said, so tell us.
Yeah.
We'll be in touch.
Yeah.
I've been practicing for years, and I'm not sure I understand.
Okay, I feel a little better, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
And
Thank
so,
you.
yeah, just to clarify, that's not by any means saying that the commission wants to approve or wants to deny this application. It's just this waiting period that the commission has to wait before.
Don't read into
making
it as a
decision.
yes. Got it.
Correct.
So do we have to do anything about it being or not being a wetland right now? We have to provide
No.
soil samples.
But we have to
information
have a
from the-
fence, so we have to do something about
Yeah,
a fence
yeah.
on the application?
Yeah, a silt
Silt
fence or.
Silt fence. Silt fence.
Yes.
Silt. I kept thinking
Yes.
saying silk. I was like, why do we
Oh.
have this?
So,
Got it.
Yeah.
Buy it at Home Depot.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so it's a geotextile silt fence,
Yeah.
I believe is the trade name. But essentially it's a, just a plastic,
Yeah, it's the plastic stuff that
piece
you
of
can use.
plastic with stakes behind it, and then that's dug into the ground. And so any soil that washes away with water or just, were to fall down a hill or something, that gets stopped by the fence. That's really the.
and so do
there.
we, I'm sorry, you guys are probably exhausted, but do we have to just draw that on the application and just write silt fence? Or do we have to have something a little more scientific than that?
No, that's just my personal opinion, but my opinion would be that it doesn't need to be super complex, or you don't need an engineer to sign off on it or anything.
Okay.
I would like to see just drawn on with a marker or something and then submitted as part of the packet.
Okay.
But having a distance from the edge of the shed to the silt fence, just an approximate distance is fine, but
Okay.
that's beneficial for the record to
Okay.
show, you're not putting it 1,000 feet away.
How far away should it be to give them guidance?
Yeah, so without going out to the site myself and looking at it and looking at the tree line and everything, usually about 5 feet, even 3 feet is fine right from the project edge. You just want enough room for whoever's out there to be able to move around and work, and not be stepping over or stepping on the fence accidentally, or machinery or equipment running into it and
And
knocking it down.
there is a way to correctly put in the silt fence
Yep.
posts.
Yeah.
There is a way, so I think you can Google it, but there is a distance that the posts have to be in, and the material of the fence actually meets the soil or is like 1 inch above. There is a method to that. Don't
Yeah.
just stick it in.
Right.
Yeah, and so
His sister's an environmental engineer, so we're gonna have
I'm calling from this.
Learning how to put up silt fence.
Yeah, so I said on a previous application tonight, but that can be found in the 2023 guidelines for erosion and sedimentation control. So that's just available online. You can just Google 2023 Connecticut guidelines erosion, something like that, and it'll come up and you'll find silt fence, and that shows you how to install it and maintain it.
Okay.
And if you can put all of this together and get it to Cameron in advance, you can very often get some feedback. I don't want to, again, add to his burden, but
Yeah.
it'll make the whole process a little smoother.
Okay, well, and Renee was super helpful to us with our application.
As
so,
always.
Yeah,
Great.
Awesome.
okay, thank
Thanks.
you.
Thank you.
Good luck.
Thank you. All right, next agenda item, agent report and correspondence, number 6.
Don't think there's any correspondence.
Good.
To my knowledge, yep. The only ones that I had for my agent report, I think I'll start with 59 Loomis Street. So this was brought to me by a concerned citizen as a possible unpermitted activities being conducted in a regulated area. So I went out, met with the property owner, chatted with him, and then I took some soil samples via hand auger to a depth of about 20 inches, and I didn't feel the need to go beyond that. But the site did not appear to have any indicators of wetland soils being present in that area where ponding was seen. And so that was sort of, I believe, the basis for going out to check was that there was ponding in the road frontage in the yard there of the property. And so without any indicators, and it was not mapped as wetlands per the town mapping, it was my personal and professional opinion that this area of concern is not subject to the town of Granby inland wetlands or watercourses regulations. Just as sort of background on that, my personal opinion on why the ponding may have been happening, and why it's happening now and possibly not previously, was that obviously we've had a lot of rain this year, and so even small storms, but just the frequency, if the soil doesn't have time to drain, that water just piles on and piles on within the soil and eventually breaks the surface,
I
and
think-
you see the ponding.
And also, they clear cut that lot. There was trees, massive pine trees on that lot. So I think that had a lot to do with it too, because they're no longer.
Yeah, certainly, trees are going to take up more water, typically, at least, than lawn grass. And then also, the previous historical agricultural use could have resulted in compacted layers within the soil from either a plow layer or just heavy machinery being driven over it, either previously or currently, for work that is going on there. And so that sort of compacts the soil to a point where water gets into a certain depth, and then it hits that compacted layer. It can't go any deeper, so it spreads out, and if it can't spread out, it goes up, and again, resulting in ponding. Likely a combination of factors that resulted in the ponding. But we discussed possible remedies, and kind of went back and forth on that, but ultimately I recommended consulting with a professional soil scientist or engineer before proceeding with any action. Again, that was to the homeowner there.
The homeowner where the ponding occurred, or the complainant?
No, where the ponding occurred. Okay. Yeah, I met with the homeowner of that property. Yeah, and so he was asking me about possible remediations, since it's not a regulated area, and I gave him a few options, but ultimately said that it would be best to consult either a soil scientist or an engineer, because they're without doing a full assessment, there could be things that are affecting his drainage other than what I was envisioning.
Is it a nightmare for that property?
And then he did have some perceived excess water entering his property. The homeowner there at 59 Loomis perceived excess water entering via town-owned and/or maintained road drainage infrastructure. And so I recommended that he just consult with the town engineer as far as that. Are there any questions or comments on that one?
No.
Thank
All
you.
right, thank you. 40 Wells Road. So this is, there's a pond at the neighbor's property at 6 Meadowbrook Road. and that has been contributing excess water onto the property at 40 Wells. So I met with Mr. O'Brien over at 40 Wells Road, the O'Brien Nursery, and I did inform him that as far as I was aware, there wasn't really much that the commission or the inland wetlands regulations can do for him. Mr. O'Brien claims that a lack of maintenance to the water leveling structures on the neighboring property where the pond is located is to blame for the excess water, which has been overtopping a dam and washing out onto Mr. O'Brien's property during rainstorms. I have plans to contact dam safety and hear back on that. So I just was recently informed at another meeting on Monday that for all dams, private and public, that there should be an emergency action plan for those dams and maintenance schedules. And so I'm going to see if there is such a thing for this dam.
Are you supposed to have one in place with the town?
I have no idea.
This will be
Got to look into it. Yeah.
Just so I can put this in, is 40 Wells Road, O'Brien complaining about Christensen's pond? Is that the pond that's over there?
Correct.
They were just, that was just in front of us last year?
Yeah.
About,
And they made some changes
yeah,
because it wasn't
they
drained.
modified their dam and they did some maintenance in conjunction with your predecessors. So I'm wondering what's going on now.
Yeah. So in Mr. O'Brien's anecdotal claims to me, I believe there's a weir at the other end opposite the dam of the pond there. So it receives water from the stream that runs by there. And so I believe there's a weir that that's what's really in disrepair. And so it's not maintaining the water level. And so it's just getting water straight from the stream and not letting some of that, bypass the pond and just go along the stream. And so when there's heavy rain events, it's filling up the pond just by rainwater and then also receiving additional water from the stream, and then that's overtopping the dam and washing out onto Mr. O'Brien's property before it actually then swings around and rejoins the stream after it meanders. Is sort of what I had observed was that that was the flow pattern there. So again, I don't think that there's anything that can be done from the commission's perspective, and that's what I had informed Mr. O'Brien. I told him that I would continue to look into it if there's any regulations around, requiring maintenance to those structures. I have yet to find anything. But again, I have to contact dam safety and see if there's anything on that end. But yeah.
Well, that weir is not a dam. I know what he's talking about, and it reaches, it'll be okay for a while because people walk down there all the time.
Right.
And there's a breach which wasn't there last year, so it just breaches occasionally. I don't know.
Well, the amount of rain we had this summer
Yeah.
was crazy. So.
Yeah.
Okay. Anything else?
The only other thing is 233 West Granby Road. So that's the enforcement order.
What's good?
Yeah.
That's a different one. 233 is different. 201.
Oh, sorry.
West Granby.
Yes.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
What's going on at 233?
Yeah. 233 West Granby Road. You're right. Sorry. I started reading it and thought it was that one. But yeah, so that is some work that's going on without a permit within the upland review area of a stream that goes through the property. So there's a house with a stream that flows in the back of the property, and then looking at the property from the road comes in through the back from the left side. swings down and crosses the road on the right side of the property. And so they've pretty much stripped all the topsoil off of the yard, and they have no erosion controls. There did appear to be some sediment that was reaching the stream, and so I went out there after being told about it. I met with one of the homeowners, and they just were unaware of any wetland or watercourse, permits or regulations. And, I did tell them that ultimately it is up to them to know what permits they need to obtain before starting any work. But I was, sympathetic that, we don't really promote the regulations very much. And so ultimately I determined that because they had stopped work upon finding this out, and they did tell me that they do not plan to resume work for quite some time. Regardless of our ask, they had some issues, I guess I'll say, for lack of a better word, and so they weren't going to be doing any work anyways. But they agreed not to resume or start any other work before obtaining a wetland permit for this this activity. And so at this time, I did not feel, because of their cooperation, that it needs to be a notice of violation. I can certainly issue that if the commission would like, but at this time, because of their cooperation, they've stopped work. The site remains relatively stable. I believe that a permit is ultimately going to be needed anyways, and so any cleanup or remediation of the area can be put into this permit if given to the applicants.
Do you know what they were trying to do?
I didn't really get an exact answer on that, to be quite honest. Yeah.
We're just taking dirt.
It's the house that was once like a single-story home, and then they started work on it and decided to go up. It's white, it's on the south side, going westbound, right at the intersection of Day Street.
Right at the
South.
intersection?
Well, it's near the intersection of Day Street South. It's up,
Okay. I can't picture it right
yeah,
now.
it's hard to picture.
Did it look like there was remediation that's required now, Cameron? Confused.
As
So
if they're just kind of leaving bare soil there or lack thereof.
yeah. So time is of the essence. I did ask them to submit an application and told them, that they can reach out to me if they had any questions or comments. I sort of heard like a thank you back, and nothing since then. Obviously, we have not received an application for tonight's meeting, and so again, if the commission would like me to issue a notice of violation, I can do so. And then as far as I understand it, in the notice, I'm not supposed to be giving any specific, remediation ideas or requirements or anything. It's simply notifying them that they are in violation, and so I can do that and then follow that up with a request for remediation or any other things that, again, the commission would require of me to issue them. But
I mean, I think it's important just to document it for our sake. It's kind of silly if you go out there and talk to them and then you disappear. It's kind of makes us look kind of bad.
Right.
But I think too, like if it's already silt going down the hill or whatever, if they already have erosion going on, and when the snow melts and March comes, it's gonna be a mess. So I think we have to do, something there, whether it's notice violation or
I think we need to
remediation.
issue a notice of violation just to get it on record anyway, so you can follow it up.
Yeah. All right. Yeah, thank you. Again, that was sort of based on their cooperation in the moment, and so I didn't believe that notice of violation was necessarily the right way to go, since I believed it required a permit anyways. But since we haven't gotten anything and I haven't heard back from them, no questions on an application or anything like that, yeah, I don't disagree that that's probably our only course of action at this point.
Yeah.
And
And it's
that's all
good
I
that you
have.
educated them, because
Mhm.
that's half the problem, is people just don't know. They
Yes.
just don't know, so.
Okay, 7, any commissioners' reports or communications?
Just because what Sue just said, I know we're late, but just what you were just saying about people just don't know. I know that the drummer has some new people on it, and they're looking for new, we
Yes,
don't even
I-
have to
I-
write them. We don't even have to write it. We just have to talk to
No,
them.
but we need to write it.
We need to get some stuff out there. We've said that
And
for a while.
I was thinking about that, and I was thinking of also making a handout for people who come in with permits of stuff to look online for, plantings and, how to put up a silt fence and stuff like that. But I can't do it by myself.
But it's just a suggestion right now, yeah.
Yes.
I mean, so.
Absolutely, we
Start
need to,
working-
we
maybe we
need
could
to
talk about it
definitely-
next meeting or
Yeah,
something.
well, no.
On the 14th, we're here for 3 hours.
It's gonna be a long one.
Oh, yeah, no, but definitely it should be put on the agenda that we need to work on that, because I think we need to educate people more.
Well, we could have a working meeting where we address these issues. We've done that before.
Okay.
Where the commission and our staff has a working meeting to try to come up with it's a public, there has to be a public record of it, but we can talk about ways to educate the public, things like articles, things like that.
I think that would be good. Great.
It'd have to be noticed and everything, but we've done that working meetings before when we had, and it was particularly on the issue of applications coming in that we couldn't make heads nor tails of. That was the last working meeting we had, so, anyway. Anything else? Motion to adjourn.
Please.
Is that a motion? So moved. Second. Vicky, all in favor, aye.